with E&T-TV, Education and Training Television. Today I'm going to interview Claire Richardson of Thames Examination. Claire is the founder and CEO of Thames Examination, and she also is a test developer and an examiner for her own company. In this interview, we give a very in-depth introduction to Claire's credentials and work experience. Then we begin to get into the meat of it. We talk about what her life, her professional life was like in the build-up to the COVID-19 pandemic, what her life is like now in the midst of it, and what her forecast is for 6 months, 1 year, and up to 5 years out. In her opinion, what the professional landscape will look like. Claire also has observations as far as opportunities that will arise from this. She also has a very clear call to action. Remember, if you want to forward to specific parts of this interview, I have chaptered the video to help you find those sections much easier. So enjoy the interview. We'll see you on the inside. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the interview. Today, I'd like to welcome Claire Richardson. Hello, Claire.
Hello. Hello.
Thank you for coming. It's wonderful to see you again and to have you part of the interview. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome. No problem at all.
All right. Now, this is going to take a second. Claire is probably one of the most credentialed and the best person with the most experience I know in education. So I want to go make sure we give credit where it's due. And of course, there we go. So here's Claire's education professional membership. Claire is a member of the International Language Testing Association, ILTA. She's also a member of the European Association for Language Testing and Assessment. She's also a member of International Association for Teachers of English, as well as a foreign language specialist. She has a MA in language testing. She is a fellow of the Higher Education Academy in UK. She has additional teaching qualifications in primary education. She has a Master's of Science in Information Technology and Business, the Cambridge Diploma of English Language Teaching to Adults, the Cambridge Delta. She also has the Cambridge CELTA, the Certificate of English Language Teaching to Adults. She has a postgraduate certificate in secondary education, the PGCE, as well as, for good measure, a Master of Arts in French and Spanish. Wow. Okay.
That's just so I could be a permanent student.
Hey, whatever it takes. Not bad work if you can get it. So let's go down a quick review. Well, let's just, you have such an amazing resume. I just want to kind of give a quick overview of it. Claire has taught in 6 countries.
France, Spain, UK, Vietnam, China, Cyprus. Yes, 6 countries.
And what about Singapore?
Sorry, yes, the one where I probably worked the longest, which I forgot.
All right,
Not Singapore. It's a wonderful place. Yes, Singapore. Yes.
All right, so 6 or 7 countries, and in everything from director to tutor to exam director. So you have amazing insight into this topic, and the topic today is the past, present, and future of education and training post. Well, I guess in relation to our new normal, which is this COVID world we live, this COVID-19 world we live in. So we're going to talk about that exactly: the past, the present, the future. Then we're going to come away with some main takeaways, some of your recommendations, and your call to action. What you think, with your amazing experience, and we should do as education and training professionals to help get over this and move forward, right? So, in the past, could you give us the 30,000 feet view of your professional life? Let's say, take for example, November, December of 2019. What was a day in the life of Claire Richardson?
December 2019. Okay, so I do several things professionally at the moment, and have done for a while. So I write English language tests for young learners who are based in Cyprus. I'm developing an online MA program in TESOL, Teaching English for Speakers of Other Languages, at a university in the UK. I'm also working on delivering medical English training online. So that's a future project, but I'm obviously in the development stage of that. So in December 2019, I was working from home. I was using technology to develop language tests, which are paper and pen tests at the moment. But now I think things are going to change regarding that. Obviously, the online MA, that I would imagine there'll be a lot more demand for that now. So I was working on that, developing the materials, using a learning management system called Canvas, and yes, developing a medical English program using Canvas and using social media to promote it.
Okay. So it sounds like you were doing a lot of things in your the pre-COVID days that you could very well just keep going with. So I guess what is the difference between what you were doing in November, December of 2019 to let's go ahead and come up to, well, you mentioned Canvas. I'm sure you were using probably Microsoft Office. Any other technology you were using then that was?
No, I think that was it. Office.
Okay.
Skype occasionally to communicate with people.
Okay.
Canvas.
Okay.
Yes, that's pretty much all that I was using. Different now, of course.
And what do you think now? Let's stay in this pre-COVID mindset. What in your opinion were education and training professionals and the industry in general doing well at that time? What did you say, hey, we're on it, we're doing it right? What are some examples? You mentioned Canvas, of course, is technology, but I'm saying in general, theoretically, or in the big picture, the abstract. What do you think was going on what do you think was happening that was really positive then?
I think in face-to-face classroom or training situations, learning had become more student-centered than previously, perhaps. There was more differentiation going on. So an awareness of the need for differentiated learning according to individual students' needs. I think teachers and trainers were using more technology than maybe 5 years previously.
Right.
Although to varying amounts. Some teachers and trainers had fully embraced technology, whereas others not at all, and others somewhere in the middle, perhaps experimenting. So I think good things were going on. However, I think education in general, in the higher education sector, so universities in particular, were still not really getting the most out of technology. For example, I just see no relevance in getting, let's say, 300 students to gather at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning on a campus in a particular lecture theatre to hear Professor X talk for 2 hours on a particular subject using PowerPoint slides. Why do they have to sit there at that time for 2 hours and not interact necessarily with the lecturer?
Right.
It's a waste of time. It's a waste of resources. I mean, to build and maintain a lecture theatre like that is massively expensive.
Right.
Students, what are students doing? They're messing about on their phones. They're meant to be making notes, but they don't very often. Or if they do, they just record it on their mobile phone. So why do they have to go there?
Right.
So there were lots of, I would say, old-fashioned things going on in terms of teaching and learning in universities, and things like the way exams are delivered in universities. Now, because of this situation, they've had to think a bit more creatively, and it's amazing how suddenly things can be done online.
Yeah, this is an interesting
before,
point.
Oh no, it wasn't possible, not possible before. Of course it was possible, but people were not willing to think differently and get out of their comfort zone and do things better, in my opinion.
It's interesting that you say that, because in my previous interview, we also had this discussion of, and trying not to make it sound so negative, but it is a bit of laziness, for lack of a better word. It's normal. It's human nature, right? If the ship isn't sinking, why bail it out, right? And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, the old saying. And I think there's a lot of that mentality. I had a conversation with some leaders in education and in K through 12, and they said, "Well, we just can't get the 6-year-olds to use to do online classes." My suggestion was, do it 30 minutes for 2 times a week when they're 6. Then when they're 7, you do it for an hour twice a week. And you by the time they're in high school, they have mastery. They don't need to, but they do make the point that people, do look to these educational institutions, especially at that younger age, as a bit of babysitting, if you will.
Sure.
And I understand that. So you answered 2 questions for one there. You talked about what things people were doing well, and some things they were doing poorly. And this is kind of this. It could be argued that this might be the positive outcome of this virus would be that, hey, it pushes us to limit that kind of unnecessary movement of hundreds of people going to a place that needs to be structurally maintained, cleaned, painted. And then you have all the embedded energy of that class of people getting there. Either they come on, they've got to get in their car, they got to stop for a coffee and all this stuff. So it's really interesting to see, which brings us to the present. Now here we are, and you talked about what you were doing before. Some people sounds like you're working mostly from home and digitally. So this may not have been a huge impact for you, but I'm just curious, just to ask the question, how has it affected your work positively and negatively? We can start with the positive first.
Well, personally, it's forced me to use tools which I've never used before. So, for example, things like Zoom. I've never used Zoom. I've never used Google Hangouts. This is the first time now, talking to you, that I've ever experienced Google Hangouts. Okay. I've used other teleconference. I've used Microsoft Teams recently, and I always used to stick to Skype, but I can see that, for example, Zoom is, for me, for my purposes, probably better than Skype, because I can share a screen, I can have a conversation with multiple people. So for teaching and training, a tool like Zoom, which I've been forced to use recently, is great. So I might never have experimented unless I'd had to. Nice. Because somebody invited me to join a Zoom meeting, and I couldn't really say, well, actually, I prefer to use Skype, because they were the ones with the control, so I had to use Zoom. But in fact, it was great. So I've discovered all these different tools, and I've another positive is that some people have been asking for online tests of English. So at the moment, in one of my roles, I develop paper and pen tests for children based in Cyprus. Now, some people have said, well, because it's probably a bit risky, even once Cyprus is not in a lockdown, it's probably going to be a bit risky for 25 people all to sit in one room. So they've been saying, is there any way in the future, not necessarily this year, but in the future, these tests could be taken online? So another positive is that it's forced people who are maybe rather reluctant in the past to even contemplate the idea of an online test to start thinking about it. And it's forced me to start exploring possible platforms. And I'm talking to somebody later today who's based in Pittsburgh about his, it's called an assessment management platform. So it's forcing me and it's forcing my customers to think about delivering language tests in a different way, delivering them online through an assessment management platform.
Kind of like what you're calling it you're calling it a test. It's a kind of a where you have a language management system, an LMS. This is kind of a testing management system.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah.
I wonder why the language management system didn't connect the dots on that. I guess it's a whole other business line.
I think it is. Yeah. Some LMSs can integrate assessment, but I think it's fairly limited. I think that there are not many. Well, there are actually a lot of assessment managing platforms around, but I'm not sure who owns them or what they are.
What's interesting is to see if they integrate with the language, with the learning management system. That's what they need to do.
That would be ideal.
Right. And I'm sure hey, nothing like a pandemic to bring around a paradigm shift, right? I mean, this is doing it for everyone.
It will happen, but it's just not there yet. I think the thing about the assessment management platforms is they've got to be a lot more secure. They've got to be very robust. So if you're trying to deliver an online test where 100 people are logged into a particular test all at the same time in 3 different countries, then your platform's got to be really stable, and robust in order to cope.
A lot of moving parts. Parts when you start crossing cultures, geographic boundaries, different technology, different protocol. It's a tangled web that we have woven. So you mentioned some of the positive things that have come about this, and it's kind of pushed you to using new technology and so forth. What are some negative side effects? What are some? It's pretty fresh still. The wounds are fresh now. We're not really sure what the end results are going to be. What are some negative things that you've experienced so far?
They're not. I haven't experienced anything negative, but I know that many UK universities are struggling because of.
It's okay. It's okay.
Is it okay? Many UK universities are struggling because they relied very heavily on the Chinese student market,
right?
For students, and that has more or less dried up. And I think their applications are down. Students have gone home, Applications for next year are down, and it's created a massive dent in their budgets.
Yeah.
So I can see that the higher education sector in the UK is really going to suffer as a result of this.
Yeah, that's a good point. It is this is one thing, you know, we talked about. The upside was reduction in movement to go to brick and mortar places, but this is another level. There's a huge reduction in movement, not just to go to the lecture hall, but to go to the other country where the lecture hall is.
That's right. Yes.
This is a huge challenge, and we, you know, of course, China is probably the largest. As I know, it's the largest market of students who do leave and go and study abroad. I know, I believe it's Australia, Canada, US, UK, all have really high enrollment. New Zealand, and I understand that it's got to be devastating. And I don't know how they're going to, but if they can move this, at least the language component of it online, they'll find that, hey, we don't need to do people to come here for I don't know. That's a whole nother interview, right?
I think you're right. I mean, there are very, very few online pre-sessionals, but I know that even before this pandemic, Coventry University in the UK created an online pre-sessional course, and it's on a platform. I don't know if you know it. It's a MOOC, and it's a UK-based MOOC. It's called Future Learn. And
I signed up for them on your recommendation and checked it out. Yeah.
So they've got an online pre-sessional course, which students take in their own country, and as long as they pass, then they either come to the UK or they do a distance learning course from their own country. So I think that's the way forward, because certainly in terms of pre-sessional English, it's a big risk for students to give up their jobs. If they're master students, they're usually working. So they give up their jobs, they come to the UK to do a 10-week language course, no guarantee that they'll pass. What happens if they fail? They go back to their country, and they've spent a lot of time and money to come here. Taken up a seat. Yeah, it's very difficult for them to get student visas, so they have to jump through hoops and pay lots of money to get a student visa. And if they fail, they then go home, you know. Whereas if they do the pre-sessional course from their own country, then they don't need to give up their jobs. They could do it part-time, online. They don't have to get a student visa. They don't have to find accommodation and sign a rental agreement, which they then have to give up because they're sent back home for failing. You know, so certainly for some courses, I think it's a good idea to make them online. There's no need for students to come here. The argument's always been with pre-sessional English students, oh, well, they'll come here and they'll have intensive English and they'll learn more quickly. Nonsense. They're completely ghettoized in groups of Chinese students. Outside classrooms, they don't use English at all. They use Mandarin.
They typically know. You know, we talked about the spectrum before, and you're kind of hitting on this, and I wanted to bring this point up. And, you know, you have the spectrum of teachers who are super quick to adapt to new technology. They're ready to jump on it. They were already using it, like yourself, and like I was set up for this. I'm studying online. I'm working part-time. I'm set up at home to do everything from home. Then you have the other people, the middle, who are, you know, if it's required to use it, they'll learn how to use it, but they're not really going to be aggressive about going and experimenting with new things. And you have this other third who are completely resistant to it and will show up to the room 30 to 45 minutes early just so they can write the notes on the board. And this is, you know, you have these three, I'll just break it down to those three kinds of people. Well, you also have these three kinds of students, and I think that they're not broken down into thirds. I think they're, and I for convenience, I broke those down into thirds, but I think there is a larger group in the middle who come to those countries for pre-sessionals, and they do. You're right. They huddle together out of class. They don't speak English. They speak their native tongue, and that's the bulk, right? And then you have the other. You have the few who will ignore the bad kids and stay the nerds, whatever you want to call them. But the ones who perform well, are the ones who don't do that. They go out and make new friends and move forward. And I don't mean it in a pejorative. Now nerd is a very positive thing because they're successful.
Yes, exactly.
And then you have the other third who are completely resistant to it. They're in the room. They're taking up a seat. They have no intention. They don't want to be there. They're not motivated. And as a result, they took up those numbers of seats that could have been filled by the students who were in the middle, or even better, the students who want to succeed and excel. So you see, this experience has given us clearly, we are able to categorize those groups now, those people now. You can't hide as much as you used to. I think that's kind of a good thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we talked about the technology you've integrated, or let's see. Let's go back to now. Now we're in the present. We talked about how the recent developments have affected your work. We've talked about positively, negatively. You mentioned some new technology. I wanted to talk about maybe some testing platforms. Which ones in particular are you keen on?
I had a look at Pearson VUE, so Pearson Education, massive group, but it wasn't really suitable because they only allow test takers over the age of 17 to use their platform.
Oh,
whereas,
wow.
Yeah, so our platform would have to allow candidates aged 8 to 18 to
be
use
a lot of
their
herding cats with doing that online with kids.
Yeah.
I would imagine. With adults, they're a little more easy to guide, but with kids, to get them to take an online test, At first, I thought, well, that's strange. They wouldn't. That's a huge market they're missing out on. But earlier we talked about variables and moving parts. Well, with kids and online testing, I would imagine that'd be.
I think the thing about Pearson VUE is it's mainly aimed at corporates. So it's mainly used by companies that want to test for various reasons. For example, Pearson VUE is used by the UK Drivers and Vehicle Licensing Association. So anyone taking a driving theory test has to log into Pearson VUE.
Okay.
So it's that kind of accountancy exams, that kind of thing. So also the problem with Pearson VUE, and I sort of thought about it before I spoke to them, but I thought, well, I'll ask them anyway. There's a conflict of interest because, of course, Pearson have their own language tests.
True. Yeah.
So they said there would be conflict of interest. Therefore, that was another reason that they couldn't say yes.
Cut off your nose to spite your face.
Well, I don't know whether they have a young learners test, but if they don't, then why is it conflict of interest? I don't know. Right. But the other one that I'm looking at, and I'm speaking to I think he's the CEO actually of the company later today. It's called OWL testing. And
what do you like them?
It's definitely educational rather than corporate.
Okay.
So I've seen demos and samples of tests that various people have created. And for example, OWL is used by various states in the USA to test K1 to K12 kids. So it's educational. The interface is quite attractive to children. So it just looks more appropriate for the sort of tests that we develop.
Sounds like they've done their homework.
Yeah. They've called it a niche. in the market.
There you go.
Yeah.
So what do you like about, I'm partial. I've used Canvas, and I've used Canvas and Blackboard and a little bit of Moodle. I really like Canvas from the creator, from the instructor's perspective. Yeah. I found it to be super intuitive. The user interface is slick. I found it very, very easy to create a module, go in and create a lesson, create a module without a lot of experience with a learning management system and LMS. What are some things that you like about it?
I think all those things that you've said.
Mm-hmm.
I think again, I've used it as an instructor to create pages and things within the page. So forum discussions, quizzes, all sorts of things. So I like the tools. It's it seems to be a lot better structured. So the structure of a course on Canvas is much clearer to the developer than, say, Moodle or Blackboard.
I agree.
I think the other thing about Canvas is that it looks better on a tablet computer and on a mobile phone than either Moodle or Blackboard. And of course, lots of students will use their phone, their smartphone,
right,
to access Canvas. So I like it for that reason. It's compatible. They've taken that into account, whereas I don't think that's the case with Moodle and Blackboard, unless I've missed something.
No, I agree with you.
So I think it's much easier to use. I think when you're doing, as you say, it's intuitive. So when you're creating something on Canvas, it knows what you're struggling with, and suddenly a little pop-up will come up on your phone, on your screen, and it will say, do you need help with creating a quiz? Yeah, I do. You can see that I'm struggling.
Yeah, they're so smart.
Very.
Artificial, the AI is
and I have to say, exactly. And I have to say, as soon as I signed up for Canvas, because I signed up as myself as a teacher, not attached to any particular institution, although now I've got another Canvas account through the university that I'm developing this MA for. But when I first signed up, about 2 hours later, I can't remember if it was it was an email from somebody at Canvas offering their help.
Nice.
Yes. And it was a named person based in the UK, not in another country, which is really important because of time zone differences.
Of course. Let me tell you.
Yeah. So someone in the UK who said, oh, hello, I'm so-and-so, business developer. I can see you've just signed up for Canvas. Wonderful. If you'd like to chat about it, or if you'd like a demonstration, or if you need any help, please get back to me. We can talk on the phone, or we can do this by email. And so I said, well, at this stage, email's fine. And he said, well, and he knew I was developing the course, and he sent me all the manuals with all the help that I could possibly need. Manuals, guidance, screenshots, that kind of thing, without asking. It was just sent. So I was extremely impressed with their customer service, whereas nobody ever contacted me like that from Moodle or from Blackboard. So there was no personal connection.
That's a great way to describe it. And I felt the same when I started using it. I felt like I was I don't know why, I don't know how they did this, but and this leads me to my next subject. When I used that tool, I felt like it was about me getting they were concerned about my level of competency with it, making sure that
Yeah.
I knew how to use it, as opposed to like, here you go, good luck, call us if you need us, bye-bye.
Yes. Yes.
And I felt like with
Yes.
Canvas, you get that sensation that, hey,
You do.
we need you to succeed so we can succeed. What's going
Yes.
on? Yeah.
And I also like their the Creative Commons element of Canvas.
Yes, I also agree. Yeah.
So you can share what you've created with other people. Other people will allow you to use what they've created. You can look at other people's Canvas sites to give you some ideas about how to structure it, what sort of features to add in. So again, that was never available with Moodle or Blackboard. You were basically on your own and dependent on somebody in the IT department to help you out. And the problem I have found with many IT services people is they do not speak the same language as the end user.
Yeah.
They just don't. It's technical jargon. They're so far ahead in terms of their technical ability that they've forgotten what it's like to be a complete beginner. And they can't grade their language. They can't go back to square one. Obviously, not all IT services people, but a lot of people don't understand the end user.
And we talk about, the different categories of people, and there are these, and there are these very few who excel, and there are these very few who are the opposite, who perform poorly. You have this middle area, but it is the same with IT, and it's the same with almost all industries now. Everything is so heavily leveraged with technology. You have people who are really good at coding, they're developers, but they can't communicate that to the layperson. And you have people who are really good with social skills and ability to communicate, but they can't get the technical side of it bolted down. So they're looking for these, we call them, they're called the 1%ers. And this is one thing that a lot of universities are trying to do, is to develop soft skills with the coders and to develop technology skills with the marketing and salespeople, so that they can bring those two worlds together. But I don't know that exists. One quick note before we move on. Another bit of technology that gives you this same feel as Canvas is Kahoot, in that you can use other people's work for a quiz if you want to. It's open source. You put it out there, everybody can use it, right? The downside is you got to make sure you got to check the content, make sure you don't get a really bad quiz or something. But great points you made about Canvas. I feel the same. I want to talk about one more thing, and to kind of distill this topic a little bit. It's again, all of these questions could be an hour interview easily. But I want to ask about how have you adjusted your motivational strategies, and any theories you employ to get that in-class feeling to the online environment, the online setting? What are some things that you're employing to adjust to this new normal?
I think with, for example, delivering a course on Canvas, I think you do need some synchronous face-to-face elements. So using teleconferencing software with small groups of students to discuss something is still necessary. Otherwise, I think I'm speaking from my own experience, because my master's in language testing was online. So at times I felt a bit alone.
No, it's interesting. I laugh because it's exactly what my previous interview said. That he said the same thing. There's that when you're completely asynchronous, which my master's degree is asynchronous. I've had calls with my professors, but not lectures with my professors. And I've had calls and meetings with group project members, but I haven't had that walking into the room with your cup of coffee kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's that aesthetic. So how do
Yes.
you so how do you keep the classroom learner centered? How do you stay learner focused in this environment? What are some tricks you've used to do that?
I think you need to set group tasks, not just all individual tasks. So, for example, this MA that I'm developing, every module has 12 units, and each unit has the same format, which in theory might sound a bit boring, but I don't think it is.
Right.
I think it creates some certainty for
Good point.
online users. They know exactly what's going to happen that week. Just like you would if you were a face-to-face student. If you were a face-to-face student, on-campus student, you'd know, okay, for each module, I have 2 lectures a week, followed up by 2 seminars, whatever. You can kind of replicate that online. So, for example, a unit, so that's each week is a unit. So a unit each week starts with an online lecture. So either talking head or audio lecture, but something human about it.
Right. There's something to be said for production value. This is something that the people who have the experience with education and training, we're good at that side of it. What we've got to figure out is how to make it, how to personalize it. How do you personalize an online class for thousands of people, or for hundreds, or even dozens of people? This is when we talked about this in the previous interview, is I was completely 100% analog during my formative years, and I adapted the new technology as time went on. But this is how do we connect the analog to the digital in a functional way?
That's
it's a great.
right.
That's the trillion. This is the $1 trillion question. We're not billions anymore. We're trillions. So we'll see how we do.
Let's come back to the unit if you have time. So,
Sure.
So there's a video lecture or audio lecture, followed by individual reading around the topic. So the lecture introduces the topic, then students have to read something on their own, and then share answers to questions that I put in forum discussions on Canvas, or share reactions to the topic in a forum discussion on Canvas. And then there are practical individual and group tasks. So the learners will have to work together to perhaps design a set of learning materials for a group of English language learners. How they do that is up to them, but I would imagine that they will use video conferencing technology for part of it. So again, that's the human element. It's the forum discussions. Okay, they can't see each other, but they are communicating.
Correct.
With another person. And if they decide to use, and if I encourage them to use teleconferencing software, then it will make it even more personal, because they'll see someone and talk to them. They have to work together as a group. Again, that's the human element there. And then a plenary at the end of the week, where I feedback, students comment on the plenary or ask questions. And my plan is also to build in tutorials, small group tutorials using, say, Zoom. So every 2 weeks, perhaps, I haven't decided definitely yet, but maybe every 2 weeks. So not every term, that's not enough. I think it's got to be fairly regular to keep that human element there. every 2 weeks have a group tutorial that I, as a tutor, lead, or one of the students leads it. And we meet online using teleconferencing software. Video in particular, I think, is essential. And we discuss elements of the course. So that's how I plan to humanize it.
Humanize. I like that word. It's interesting as you bring it up, and I'm relieved to hear that because that's pretty much how my master's course is set up at Purdue. That is pretty much taking away the teleconferencing with the professor. That's how we set up, and it is almost exactly how our 8-week courses are designed. Yeah. We start with little bits. We build on that. We do have structure. We have the timeline is pretty structured. There are a few toggles and a few changes here and there, but there's enough going on, enough new things happening with all the information and the raw learning that other stuff is, if you can keep something consistent and something regimented, you don't have to worry about that. It doesn't take up bandwidth. You can count on what, and you're not learning, it's a distraction if it's varied and it's convoluted. If that part of it is very structured and regimented, you can, okay, I know that's there. I know what's coming. Now I know what I have to do, right? That seems to work very well.
I think so.
So let's see the future. Dun, dun, dun. What's going to happen? So what do you think is going to linger? What do you think is going to stick? What do you think of all these new things that we're doing? What do you think is going to be with us the next, 5, 10, 15, forever years moving forward? What's going to be our new, well, the chalkboard's going away, but what's going to be the new chalkboard, the new thing that is the way to communicate, the way to educate, that's going to stay with us?
I think there's going to be a lot more online delivery of courses in particular, because people who are maybe reluctant to even contemplate online delivery of courses before have been forced, that they've been given no option. They are now teaching online, and I think now that they've seen the possibilities, they're more likely to stick with it. So they will be less fearful of what online learning actually is. They'll have some understanding of what it is, some personal experience of what it is. And I think even if they don't develop fully online courses, they might decide, we'll have some blended elements. So they might be more willing to use Canvas and Moodle and Blackboard more than they were before. As a sort of, because many people just still use LMSs as a sort of file dumping ground.
Yeah, it's a content repository basically, or something like that.
So and I think they'll use teleconferencing software with students more than in the past. I think what's really surprised people, and I'm glad about this because it's what online course developers have been saying for a long time, is that online course delivery is very time consuming.
This is what a lot of people seem to be, they're shocked. Oh, this is so hard. This is so hard.
Yes.
Because you just started doing it. You didn't hop on a bike and ride off into the sunset.
Yeah.
It's something that you have to develop. You have to develop your own routine, your own regimen. Yeah.
I mean, you can't just walk into a lecture theatre and kind of wing it for 2 hours.
Speak for yourself.
I'm not speaking for myself.
I'm joking.
But I know the people that I'm speaking for. Yeah, they do. They drag out they drag out lecture notes, PowerPoint
Oh
slides,
yeah.
or some course book that they used maybe 3 years ago. They don't prepare. They think, oh, I've done this before. I can just walk in and use it.
Hmm.
You can't do that online.
No, no. You've got to be buttoned down. You've got to have everything where,
It's got to be ready. Yeah.
yeah. And this is what, a lot of, well, speaking about the future, what about, well, let's keep that in mind and talk about one more thing because this is all related, but with the technology, with Canvas and so on and so, Canvas as I recall is free still for teachers,
Yes,
right?
it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you see? How are they going to make money with these programs? And
I think I think they will start charging.
yeah, first one's free, right? Padlet did that. Are you familiar with Padlet?
Yeah, Padlet. Yeah.
Padlet did that. I was lucky to get in, and if you already had the Padlets established, you could keep those. They wouldn't take your existing Padlets away. So I was lucky and had about 30 set up already. But anybody who was just starting, you got 2 or 3 for free, and then the rest were. So I made it under the line. But that's something I agree. I think a lot of them they're gonna realize they're leaving money on the table, and they're gonna have to charge something. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. We were talking about before this. We were talking about. Oh shoot! I've lost my thread. What was it we were talking about? Oh well, it'll come back. If not, it'll be. Well, I'll call you tomorrow. So. What do you see trending? We talked about some trends in the future with online learning, and you're going to have people, adopting the new technology by force, whatnot. What do you think are the biggest problems facing you now professionally and the industry in general? How are you going to, and how will you cope with those problems that have arisen?
I think training is a big issue. So recently, because of COVID-19, people have been forced to move into the online environment to deliver their teaching. I'm talking particularly about universities. So
right.
they've had to just jump from one day to the next to using online.
You jarred my memory, and this is what I was going to bring up about. So I just remembered talking about instructional designers, which is it's basically what I'm learning to do. Yeah, you're right. There are a lot of people who are, in that category who, were dead set on, and they were great instructors and very effective and had their way. But they were resistant to technology, and now they have to adopt it. Yeah. So you're going to see this. I think in my field in general, you're going to see huge demand for people who can, let those people. They're going to have a middle person who connects their knowledge, their insight, their ability to instruct to the technology. Right.
Yes.
To completely train someone and ramp them up to learn how to use all the technology overnight is we arguably impossible, right? You just can't do that. It just, the curve is what it is. What's interesting is how do you and that is where the person who has the soft skills and the technical skills, how can that person communicate with the expert, the SME, who's the professor in this case, or the lecturer, or the 6th grade teacher? How do you get that amazing skill that they've honed their professional life to digital format? I think that I agree with you. I think that's going to be it's going to be a big. It is an industry in itself, a sub industry of education and training, but I see it blowing up.
Yeah.
I
Because
graduated in September.
you've chosen the right program to study, because I think you know, in UK universities now, many lecturers don't have the necessary skills to deliver completely online.
Right.
They don't know about the methodology. They don't know about the pedagogy behind it, the
Absolutely.
methodology. They don't have the technical skills. And in UK universities, there are very few instructional designers. So in one university with maybe 5,000 staff,
Wow.
30,000 students, there are maybe 5 instructional.
Wow.
That's it, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not enough people. And also,
well,
some universities don't have dedicated instructional designers
at all. At all.
They have IT service staff, but they're the people that go around fixing Cisco systems, and
that's a different job.
It's a different job completely. So,
well, and that's what this is a great point you make, is because it is, and this is what people, you know, they say, well, why don't you just learn to teach online? No, that is, why don't you just get, well, if this is an administrator telling you this, well, why don't you learn how to repair boats?
Yeah.
Because it is a different job. Now, they're in the same field. It's not exactly that far of a stretch, but it's exactly that point that you're making. This is, well, you can do it. And this is what I see a lot of happening right now. Well, hey, we're going to go online. And then the teachers are like, well, what do you mean? Well, you're going to teach your class online, which is basically, we're giving you a whole new job.
Yes.
Right? And
it's
people
very
are just
stressful for them.
Very, yeah, especially for people who are reluctant.
Yeah. Well, I've got friends who work at universities in the UK who they're not English for academic purposes specialists. They're people in the actual receiving departments. They're people in international studies or in applied linguistics or in medicine. And they are very stressed by,
of course,
having to literally switch overnight to this online learning. They don't know how to do it. And not, I don't mean technically. They have no concept of what it is. What is online learning? How do you go about it? You know, and someone I know, bless her, she was so pleased with herself that she managed to do an asynchronous chat on Blackboard. You know?
And those are basic skills. Those are the basics, right? Yeah.
Very basic, but she'd never done it before. And I completely understood the way she felt, because I remember that's what I used to be like when I first came across a learning management system. I hadn't got a clue what it was. This thing called Blackboard. It was the first one I used. Blackboard, what's that? I opened it up. I thought, oh God, what is this? What do I click? What do I do? You know, right from square one. It's like learning how to walk.
Yeah, it's trying to find the light switch in a hotel room with the lights off, right? You're just rubbing the walls. I know it's here somewhere.
It's completely different.
Yeah. So let's. I 100. This is so great to have this opportunity to speak with you and with Brian and soon with Neil, is because you know there are a lot of things that I have thought about, but I haven't been able to voice them. Yeah, and it's great to get these. So we're almost finished. Don't worry. I know it's almost lunchtime for you. We'll get you eating here soon. But so let's talk about near term, middle term, and long term future. What do you think is going to happen this next fall when in the Northern Hemisphere? You know, the fall semester starts in September. What do you think it's going to be like? Fall 2020, then we're going to go a little further into a year from now, the spring of 2021, and then let's fast forward to 2025. What do you see happening? We'll start with with September of 2020? What do you think it'll be like?
I think, talking about the university sector, I think lots of universities are right now desperately trying to get their face-to-face courses online.
Right.
So I think, and ready for September, the beginning September this year, 2020.
4 or 5 months.
Yeah, they're desperately trying to get their courses, if they can, online, because of course some courses don't lend themselves so well. For example, the sciences, you need to do practical lab work. How do you cope with that?
Correct.
But for many courses, you don't physically need to be on a university campus.
Correct.
If it's something like business studies or social science or art subjects, you don't have to be physically on campus.
I can comment to that directly. I know that Purdue, and I know several other universities in the US, and I'm sure the UK, the order is now they're going to reassess as of May 15th. But a month ago, middle of March, they canceled all in-person classes in West Lafayette, and they pushed all the teachers within 2 weeks to have everything 100% online. Basically, that's for this industry, for instructional design, that's overnight.
Yeah.
And then for summer courses, they would basically, the deadline is May 15th to make the decision about all summer courses, and then in September. Now, the good thing about Purdue is they do have one of the better learning design and technology programs. They have several students. They cannibalize a lot of their talent. They get the best ones. And I have some great professors who did study there. And fortunately, they do have not enough, but they do have a deeper than most universities talent pool to be able to connect the experts to the students and go from in-face to online. This is crunch time, and I'm almost glad I'm glad I had not graduated just now, because there are probably a lot of people pulling hair out, and I'm not sure I would, not so sure I would, it would be a happy moment. But they're doing it, and it's there are some, we talk about, people, in the front lines of healthcare, and we talk about people, in many different, but these people who are transitioning these massive universities and these huge learning institutions from analog to digital, from in person to, they're really also doing our species a huge favor in keeping people learning and keeping them sharp. So hats off to them.
Yes.
What
but
about?
I think that, they're worried about their income stream, because,
of course, how are they going to pay these people to keep doing that, right?
they're not going to have the students in September. Yeah,
nobody can move.
Is
it's interesting that you bring this point again. This is, we're all in the same field, so we're going to have a similar mindset. But Brian had the same comment. And well, great. We have all these people who can do this, but who's going to pay to go to the university? How can they pay to go to the university? With a contracting economy that is, contracting is, to put it lightly. And we talk about movement. Great. So we've got this. Imagine if you had the most amazing online learning system in the world, but the economy at large, how does the economy continue to move? Think about all the coffee shops that make money from those 300 students that go to that lecture. Think about the people who go and buy their pretzel, they go and have their, there's a lot of the economy hinges on people moving, going from A to B, because usually they stop at, A point 1, A point 2, A point 3 before they get to B. To spend money to do things, and that's right. The economy is driven by it. So we'll see how it plays out. That's a good lead into 2021. So we've said 2020 is pretty up in the air, but let's think about spring 2021, basically a year from now. What do you think will happen by then? Let's just say that we do. We can't. We're shooting in the dark here, but let's just say What's going to happen with education and training by then?
It's really hard to predict.
Humor me. Give me a quick answer. A quick answer. It doesn't have to be long.
I think some face-to-face courses will start up again, and things will go back to normal. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I think, that there's so much has been invested in face-to-face courses, and they're such a valuable income stream for, say, universities, because you're quite right. There's all the other things that students pay for. So universities have built their own student halls of residence. Well, they're all empty. You know, what are they going to, what are universities going to do with their estates? Their buildings, their teaching facilities, their halls of residence. They're not going to, what are they going to do with them? So I think by in a year's time, there will be a lot of students back on campuses and living in halls of residence. Because I think universities have too much to lose. By going 100% online.
Yeah, I don't have the figure off the top of my head, but you know,
in that time frame anyway.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a long-term strategy to sell off your entire university estate. Who are you going to sell it to?
Well, and that's exactly it.
As you say, particularly at the moment with the economy the way it is and the way it's going to be for probably the next decade, let's face it. Who are they going to sell their estates to? So they are going to want students on campus. Yeah.
You know, and we're talking about, especially in the U.S., I don't know. I don't know if I don't know the enrollment figures for UK universities, but the US, they're massive. 45,000 students, acres and acres and acres and acres, hundreds of acres. Lubbock is Texas Tech has the largest campus in likely the world. It is obscene how big it is, and there's a lot of work and money, and the economy is built. That town is built on that. You know, it's interesting. So let's go further into the future. Let's go beyond making ridiculous predictions, and let's just go for it. Let's go to winter 2025. Let's just be as far-fetched as you can. 5 years from now, roughly, what do you think is going to happen?
I think there'll be some contingency planning will have taken place in that time period, so that if anything like this happens again, people will be more prepared next time round, because it will happen again.
Of course. Yeah, something like it,
something like it will happen again. So I think there'll be a lot more of that going on in that 5-year period between now and then.
Well, I have an idea in mind of what I think it's going to look like, but I want to hear yours first. Like, okay, so what would a contingency plan look like? What do you think would happen? What would that?
I think I think universities will probably go for the happy medium, which is blended learning, a combination of on-campus, face-to-face, and also online, so that they can reap the benefits of the on-campus situation, which helps their income stream, but also if they need to suddenly switch to completely online because something has happened, then there'll be a lot better place to do so.
I've got you on this one, and I think, and I 100% agree. What happened this time was we hit the iceberg. The Titanic hit the iceberg, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's okay, get in the lifeboats. There aren't enough lifeboats.
No.
Right?
What
not
are
nearly
lifeboats?
enough. Exactly.
What are
Lifeboats.
lifeboats?
Yeah.
What
Well,
do
our
they look like? How do
yeah,
they work? How do I
exactly.
operate one? What do I
Ex
do?
On and on and on. How does this thing work, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that this contingency plan is going to be okay. We have enough lifeboats for every single person in here, and everybody knows how to get in one.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have a pilot for each lifeboat or a captain designated. And if that person's missing, we have a chain of command for each lifeboat, and we're going to have a contingency plan in place, right?
Yeah.
That's what I see. That's the way I think
Yes,
that's what you're
yes,
trying to say is that's kind of
yes,
what
yes, yes,
we're,
absolutely. Yeah,
and
yeah,
hopefully we don't forget this. You know, hopefully in 5 years we will have the ability to forget it, and hopefully some people, you know, younger kids start forgetting it, and hopefully we can all move on. But if not, it does. Even if we do reach that point, the leaders and the people who are on the cutting edge of this industry need to be aware and make sure that those provisions are put in place.
yeah, they
And
do.
I think we've been putting that off for the longest time, and now people are
Yes,
realizing, oh yeah, we need to have this ready. And
yeah,
I think it's going to be education. I think it's going to be for companies and corporate and training. They're going to have, you know, be a little more aware and ready of icebergs.
I think so.
Because
Yeah,
okay, so let's see. Now we're almost finished. Don't worry. What about, okay, so we've kind of touched on this already. And you know, we could, this doesn't have to be we've already hit this point, but I want to see just specifically, where do you see present and future opportunities in the industry? What do you see as really opening up? What do you see just taking off like the pandemic on a curve? What jobs do you see really loading up and really just bringing people in as quickly as possible?
I think what you said, what we talked about earlier, this whole
Mm-hmm.
area of very neglected area, very small area of instructional design.
Mm.
I think that is a massive, an untapped opportunity.
Yeah.
I think that it's an industry in its own right. There are very few people who are that type of hybrid person, for want of a better word. People with the educational knowledge and experience, and the ability to communicate well with other people, but also the technical knowledge and experience as well. Mm. So I think there'll be a lot more jobs available in instructional design. I think also, yes, good for you. I think there'll also be a lot more companies looking to create platforms and digital tools specifically for education, because a lot of them now are not for education. They're for anyone. They're very generic, or they're aimed at the corporate world. But the corporate world doesn't fit the educational world. So,
yeah, training overlaps, but it's not the same. Yeah.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. So I think I sort of realized that when I was looking at online course platforms, you know, the ones like Teachable, and I think there's the one called QDo. There are various platforms where you can upload a course and basically sell a course.
Udemy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they're not quite right.
They're not. They're one size fits all. They're not.
Yeah, they're one size fits all. They're too generic, and it's the same with testing. There are testing platforms, but again, they're aimed more at people, as I said earlier, doing a driving theory test or an accountancy exam. They're not necessarily aimed at a particular sector of education. So, for example, neglected areas are young learners.
Yep.
And languages. So I think these platforms need to be a lot more tailored to specific end users. So, for example, the OWL testing platform, it ticks two boxes. It's educational and it's clearly aimed at young learners.
Yeah, that's
Wonderful. You know?
that's going to be the biggest challenge, is getting young learners online learning.
Yeah. So I think that's the thing. It's more instructional designers to train people, to develop courses for people, but then the platforms, not all, but many, need to be a lot more specific for the needs of the end user. Not this sort of one size fits all kind of thing. Because it doesn't work.
That worked when people had to do it for certain projects or certain jobs, but now they need to live out of these systems. They need to
exactly.
This is their school they're going to. This is their classroom now. It really is. Before it was just like, well, use this for this, use this for this. Now it's like, hey, use this for everything. And,
exactly. It needs to be a lot more integrated. Yeah.
Here I am. I'll be ready in a couple months. I'm ready now.
I'll be knocking on your door.
All right. My virtual door. Knock on. I'll be knocking on your camera.
Yeah.
Hey, one more thing, and this is, because of your amazing credentials and experience, and because you're, as I know you personally, as an awesome individual. Yes. No more handshaking. We're bowing. No more handshaking. Yeah. Namaste.
Namaste.
What is your call to action? If you could grab someone by the lapels and say, hey, we need you to do this. You're an education and training professional. We need you to do this to help save the world. What are you going to do? Or how are you going to make this world a better place? Do this. Give me one or two things.
I think don't miss the opportunity. Don't let the opportunity that's been created now just vanish into the ether. Now you've got all these people, either willingly or reluctantly, teaching online, putting courses online. Let's seize that opportunity and get them to keep going and improve their skills and do more online than they were doing before. So I think that's the main one. Don't let all this recent learning and experience, either good or bad, that's been experienced by instructors, don't let it go to waste. Capitalize on it for them personally and for organizations. And I think the other thing is keep communicating online more, because people in a professional way, because many people were in education, many people were communicating personally in a personal way online, but they weren't having meetings online, for example. They weren't talking to students online. It was always face-to-face meetings, timetabled 3 months in advance. Well, why do you need to do that? You have a meeting if you need one, not because you feel that you should have one. So, and it made people go to a certain room at a certain time and sit there talking when it could all have been done online.
Right. It sounds like you're trying to say to be more effective with the available resources, and those,
and
all
more
of them.
Efficient as well. Efficient and effective. So these communication tools are there. We've been forced to use them now. Let's continue using them so that we don't have to have these rather anachronistic ways of communicating with each other and doing our work.
It sounds like you're saying there's a happy balance of, you want to stay in touch with people, but you don't have to be right in front of them all the time, right?
No.
Like, yeah.
Remote working. Lots of people like it. The more remote working.
I love it.
I love it.
I love it. I'm very social on my own. I don't need to go to work to be social, right?
Same
That's forcing people to be social, is putting them in a workplace and, okay, be nice with all these people you don't know or maybe don't like, but you got to be nice to them. Whereas I think what the great thing about remote working is it allows people to choose who they want to hang out with socially, and then they interact in a professional way. So there's less of an opportunity to behave inappropriately, right?
Yeah.
So you know it's a very structured corporate or a very structured professional environment. You know how to behave in that context. But when you try to blend the two, that's where you have the problems with HR. People cross the lines, and it's you know.
I think you're absolutely right. I think for that reason too, and I think also critically important is the environmental aspect.
True.
Why force people to travel for an hour on a train or in a car to go to a meeting that could have been conducted online? Save the planet. Yeah.
Well, Claire, I'm about to run out of batteries on my headphones.
Sure.
I just want to make sure to give you. Is there anything else you'd like to say, or
thank you very much. It's been great to discuss all of this. I've never discussed this with anyone else before, but it's
thank you. Glad to give you the opportunity. Glad to have the opportunity.
Getting it all out of my system.
We can do this weekly online.
Okay, you're on.
All right. Well, I'll hold you to it. And it's great to see you and great to talk with you again.
Too,
and thank you again.
Good luck with everything. And thank you too. It's been really nice to talk to you.
Likewise. My pleasure.
And we'll resume on Facebook, no doubt.
We'll keep it going. All right. Take care, Claire. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye. Bye, Bernie.